When your beard and your mustache get frozen, it's cold.
Hey there, thanks for turning down my road. If this is your first time here, my name's Carl. My little brother and I both work for local farmers full time, but we both also farm together with our cattle herd and our hay operation. Everybody's involved, from the smallest to the biggest. If you don't have the joy of farming yourself, I'd love to help you experience it through this channel. Whatever your background, you found the right place. This is Dodge Brothers Farm and Ranch.
Well, the skid loader at the big farm sprung a leak on the coupler for the auxiliary hydraulics where you plug in the angle adjustment for the snow blade. So I'm on the way to town to go to a dealership and see if I can get a O-ring kit for that coupler, or if I'm gonna have to get a whole new coupler. Hey, when you're driving down the road and you see a cattle chute for sale, you've got to stop and mess with it. All right, so I just got here and I just remembered that Dad bought a hay tedder this year. And I see him sitting over here. I kind of think this is the kind he bought. This is a Rhino tedder. I believe the one that Dad bought is 19 feet wide. I think this one might be a little smaller. Anyway, you may remember that we had that haymaking disaster this summer where we ended up making a lot of use out of the neighbor's tedder. Rented that from him, and we would have been in a world of hurt if we wouldn't have been able to get a hold of it. So Dad decided that he was going to buy a tedder at the end of the year. All right, let's go see if they have this O-ring. Okay, apparently nobody makes a rebuild kit for auxiliary hydraulic couplers, and the dealership that I was at does not have the proper type of coupler for the brand of skid loader that we have. So, on to dealership number 2. Have you ever went for parts and ended up driving all over the place and accomplishing very little? I had to go to this first dealership anyway to pick up this ag cam that we had rebuilt. This is the camera off of our grain cart, and it had to have a new pigtail installed, so it got sent off to Dakota Micro to have that done. So that was a plus. I got the camera back, and I was hoping that they would have a coupler for the skid loader. They didn't have it. So I drove another 15 minutes to another town to the second dealership that is actually a dealer for the brand of skid loader that we needed the coupler for. And lo and behold, after 20 minutes of trying to figure out what was going on, they didn't have the coupler either. So I went back to the local farm store about 15 minutes away from home on the way home to pick up a couple things. And I thought, I'll go back to the hydraulic section. Certainly they won't have this specialized coupler. Well, look at this. They may not have had the exact coupler, but they have some couplers, and they have these adapters that you can adapt the couplers to whatever brand of skid loader you're working on. So we've got the female, we've got the male, and we've got this coupler adapter, and then this coupler adapter here, and I think we're going to be able to make everything work. Here we go. Brand new couplers on top, leak tested, good to go, ready to blade some snow. So a few of you commented last week noticing that the speedometer doesn't work on my F-350 pickup, but nobody noticed that I've got it in park all the time when I'm driving. And the reason for that is this is actually a manual transmission. It looks like it's an automatic. That's because it used to be. When I bought it, it had a bad automatic transmission in it. And I have a mechanic friend who had a used manual transmission, and that was the cheapest way to get this truck up and going again. And the reason the speedometer doesn't work is because when we first got it back from the mechanic, it was having some problems when I'd go to shift, the engine RPMs would hang up around 3,000 RPM instead of dropping down when I wanted to shift, and that was because the engine computer was looking for a signal from an automatic transmission, and it wasn't getting one because that transmission was gone. So the proper way to fix this problem would be to buy a new computer for it that was designed to run the engine with a manual transmission. However, the cheap way to fix it was to just unplug the speed sensor from the rear end of the truck. I know someday I should get a new computer for it, so I've got a speedometer, but I've grown accustomed to watching the RPMs of the engine and knowing how fast I'm going based on what gear I'm in. So I'm doing just fine. Anyway, that is why the speedometer doesn't work on my truck. And if you remember last fall when we put some wet corn directly out of the field into one of the bins without running it through the dryer, we were running out of propane. We were getting in a bind and we needed to get some more corn out. We were running out of time. The weather was not cooperating. So we filled this bin right here with wet corn. It was about 20 to 21%. And then this corn in this bin that came out of the dryer through that pipe system up there is actually about 14%. So we've got the big long auger set up on the wet corn bin and the short truck auger set up on the dry corn bin. And we're blending them together. We're blending 20% corn with 14% corn, and we're actually coming out around 16%, so that's really good. This is allowing us to get rid of this wet corn without having to move it and run it through the dryer. We can't actually put it directly in the grinding corn either, because we've discovered that if you don't get the corn below, say, 18%, and you grind it for feed, it ends up bridging up in the feed bins, and it's a bad thing. So anyway, the truck's gonna be here in just a second. We'll get it loaded up. I've had a lot of questions lately about moisture content in corn, so while we're waiting for the truck to show up, I'll hit that quick. Corn needs to be below 15% moisture for long-term storage. That's why we run it through the dryer right there every year, because most of the corn that we take out of the field is around 20% average, maybe just under, I would say, in a normal year. And we need to get it below 15% to store it long term. This 20% corn that we put in the bin will store for a fairly long amount of time, given the fact that it was put in at a really low temperature, and after we combined it, put it in the bin cold, we ran the aeration fan and blew cold air on it every time that it was really cold outside after that, and made sure that it was all cooled off. Temperature and moisture are your two most important things when it comes to how long you can store grain. There is a cool chart that I believe is put out by Iowa State University that shows the shelf life of corn based on the moisture content and the temperature of the corn in storage. So I'll try to link to that in the description if I can remember. It's really cool. Just know that the wetter the corn and the warmer the corn, the shorter the shelf life. So if you've got wet corn that you need to try to store for a few months, you need to get it really cold. And if you've got dry corn and it's not warm, you can store it for an awful long time. So hopefully that clears the moisture thing up for you guys a little bit. If it doesn't, go ahead and let me know in the comments and I'll try to elaborate a little bit more. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in this week. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that little bell right next to the red subscribe button, and you'll never miss out on another video when it gets posted. Also, if you just can't wait a whole week to see what's going on, you can head on over to Instagram and follow me there at Dodge Brothers Farm on Instagram. Thanks for riding along. I'll see you next week.